Welcome to the Principals Committee. I will be playing your moderator. Scott has done double duty about 18 times, and so I've offered to do it once. So we do need a volunteer to take notes. Anybody? Christian took notes in the last meeting. Anybody else want to take notes? I think that's a no. Nobody wants to take
If no one's able to, I can do it. Just trying to spread the love.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Sure.
Feel free to add yourself to the attendees section. It's always good to have a record of who's here, and nobody's added themselves yet. In terms of topics and action items, right now it is blank. I think that if I were to add a topic, I would do the simplify name change PR, which I'll add myself to. Anybody else have a topic they would like to bring up? I think we'll make this a working session here. William and Moshe, just so you know, we are very close with the GitOps website. So there'll be a PR coming up probably this week on that. So the principles will be reflected as is the current accepted version of them. So that'll be up. And then obviously we have a lot of events and things coming up. So that's all great news. Looks like Scott added working session based on accepted process proposal from last two meetings. Yep, happy to do that. So let's start then with the simplify name change PR. This pull request has had a fair amount of discussion on it at this point. So just to kind of recap, I set up this PR originally to say, like, I feel like the principles are right. The language is a little awkward. Maybe we can do it in a different way. So I've made a PR on that. There's been a few comments and discussion about it. And I think we're getting close. I think I don't remember who said it, but if it was Scott or somebody else, but they said, how do you feel about an axiomatic? Oh yeah. That was you, Scott. So this was the options presented by Scott, and he said, what do you think about doing an axiomatic thing? Which I liked that quite a bit. And then Jay Butler added maybe doing some kind of slight modification on that I thought was probably pretty good. So
I think in the end, yeah, that's correct. And I think in the end, we, at the end of that meeting, said that we would actually update this PR. And I know we haven't done that before today, but that's okay. We can do that. We can do that soon. But I would move to just mostly mentioning this and say, let's, like, for everyone on the call, literally everyone, Dan, me, Christian, Robert, Moshe, William, did I miss anyone? I don't think so. To please just follow this PR, and over the next couple of days, we'll put the new language. And to be clear, it's not to change what we've already done. It is, it is a little bit. It's only the very first sentence. It's primarily changing the redundancy there. And the question is, how should we handle the redundancy? The thing where it says the principle of, the principle of, the principle of. And there are examples of, Dan, I don't know if you want to link to the website or the website draft right now, or if you'd rather not, but if we do, we could show an example of how it would look very untidy in a list. So you can see that there's still, oh cool, thanks Dan. There's still, if you scroll down to the principal section, it still shows the older principles draft before this new draft. And each title is very memorable in yellow. And then there's the description below it. This, I think Dan's PR, if I am not mistaken, the primary purpose of it is not to rehash all the wording and everything else like that, but to remove that redundant the principle of, and then just decide how we want to handle that. And so far, everyone seems to like just describing that first sentence as an axiom. And I think that's really it. I don't think we need to decide on this meeting, but just to make sure that that's clear to everyone. And please follow the issue, right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Pull request. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to rehash anything else. We'll keep the discussion happening there. If unless anybody has any other comments on it. So with that, I think we're clear to move to the next item, which is working session based on accepted process proposal from last two meetings. And I think, Scott, this was your item.
Yes. So I don't want to overtalk it, but let's see, where do we have it? Oh, here we go. Yeah, the action item last time was the idea of process, and we've actually talked about it the week before last, and then last week because we were working on this this issue that this PR that Dan just mentioned, we didn't actually jump right into it yet. But now the goal at the end of that meeting was we would spend a bit of time at the end of the meeting and really prepare so that we could jump into it today, and I think we're there. And to be clear, I think the process is that we open the previous content draft and we review it as a team. Excuse me. We're really in a parsing mode as the proposal was to try to don't eat the elephant all at once, just do it one bite at a time kind of approach, where we initially start to sort through what was there, and mainly for these things, we look at each piece of it, and we're not going to discuss it at length or debate it one piece at a time at the moment. We're going to first just discuss whether we think that they're useful, definitely, or potentially useful. We can just label it as such, um, uh, or likely not useful. If we think, okay, we've moved past that, we can just sort of say likely not useful, or definitely useful, or potentially useful, and then we can say, if we know already off the top of our heads, we can say, oh, this would be good for. It's really important in the meantime for this to be in the notes section for the principles, like we have the temporary ones so far. These would be great glossary items. These would be good. These are actually use cases, so let's sort of label that as working on for the use cases section when we review that section, or some other supporting document, and just do that. And if we get done with that by the end of the day, that would be a monumental task. That's my quick, try to be quick, but that's my quick summary of the proposed process that it seems like we're all into.
Christian says, okay. So what's the next step then, Scott?
Do you want, I guess like somebody could share their screen and open up I'd be happy to share my screen if you want, Dan.
Sure.
Would that be good? Okay. Let me open up the PR. Share screen. Oops. Sorry, Slack. Or not Slack, sorry, Zoom, 1 second. Okay. I'll blow up the font a little bit. The browser font. How does that look?
Yep.
To everyone? Okay. So what I was just going to do is go into the files changed. I'm going to collapse all of your faces for a second so I can actually see my screen. So maybe don't rely on hand gestures at the moment. Just like interrupt me, please. Verbally. Or someone help someone do that if need be. Okay. So basically the files are this. We've got several different files here in that initial PR, and a good amount of content. So the first one is the glossary, and I believe we've for the most part already moved these glossary items over. We can go through and just look real quick, but I believe that we have. We can just double check. The principles text itself, which was by far the biggest document. There's supporting information in here that, basically just like sentence or essentially paragraph by paragraph, and make sure that there's not something in there that's worth mining when we go to put the rest of the documents together. We just don't want to miss something that was good that we think is still useful. And that's pretty much it. So we've got that summary, etc. We've got a lot of discussion. I'll skip past the conversation. We've got some kind of description about the principles, etc. Like it's a direction, not a destination, things like that. Okay, and then let me just see if there's something else that was big at the bottom of this file. Right. So there's kind of a Q&A here, kind of an FAQ here, in a way, or items that might be an FAQ, like question and answer, etc. And this is just like a quick summary first, or a quick glance, and then we can go through it point by point. There's quite a lot of content here. Then we have a rationale file, and it describes some of that. So again, we can just think about where that might live, or pieces of it that might live, or if we don't want it to live anywhere, that's fine too. And I believe that was the only major change except for to the README, which has already been done. We have a setting up Git file that doesn't have any content in it, but I know Weaveworks has content elsewhere that relates to things that you must do, or things that you must do in order to set up Git properly, in order to do GitOps. We may or may not agree with all of those as a team, so I don't have those on me right now, but just to show you that that's what that file was a bookmark for.
Question there.
Yes.
If I may. So that last section that you highlighted there, wouldn't that be part of what was discussed in one of the previous meeting about having a section on, I don't know, either it was not called best practices, but it was about like reference implementation or things like that. Wouldn't that fit in that type?
Yes, and we don't actually have a fully decided yes or no as a group yet, but I just recall a lot of positive feedback on this one. I think where we left it, this is my memory, so please people keep me honest, and also it's not decided yet, so we can figure this out as a team. But the idea was that we would have a best practices document that would be general best practices. They don't have to be quite as foundational as, I mean, they can't, of course, be as foundational as the principles. They would build on the principles. So things like some of the notes that we had said were very important, we could potentially link those in the best practices to say that this is what we mean by these principles, and these are things that are very important to keep in mind no matter what platform you're on or no matter what you're using. And then when we get to things that are specific to specific products or vendors or things like that, like this is important on GitHub or GitLab, or I don't know, when using S3 when using buckets, or when on AWS or whatever, that could be in a use cases document or something like that. So we're actually getting into specific implementation details at that point they're not like the full READMEs for, like, say, Argo or whatever else. They are at that point just things that are fairly important in terms of integration. And I think that's where we left it, but that's my memory. So for now, that's not really required for us to do that if we're going to follow this plan. We really just need to open up the files separately, if that's okay. I just gave you kind of an overview, so you kind of could make a mental map of which files. Again, just as the jump to section, it's really just mainly just looking at the glossary to make sure that there's nothing missing in what we put in. Primarily looking at these files, principles and rationale. And I'll just, I guess I would, whoever's sharing the screen, if it's still me, I would just open the file like this, at this edit. And we can just look at it together, paragraph by paragraph, and see how we feel, or how, what we need to do. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, I saw some thumbs up now. Okay.
Yep, let's do it.
And Dan, you're moderating this, so just please make sure that I don't go off the rails here.
We've got the time. There's only one other topic to discuss today, so
Okay.
Yeah, no, this sounds good.
You're like, Scott, I can't guarantee you won't go off the rails, but no, just in case I start, like, I don't know. I'm not thinking about moderating right now. I'm just thinking about trying to participate.
No, don't. I'll think about it.
All right, cool. All right, so I think what we should do, if that's okay with you all, is open up.
So, Question. Sorry, I'm trying to find the raise hand button today here. But this might take quite a bit, and I'm looking at the next topic about collected feedback. I don't know how extensive that will be, but it might be less than this.
Good
So
point.
wondering
We
if
do that first.
Yeah.
And then come back to this. Are you all right with that, Scott?
Definitely.
Okay, so we had a goal to go and collect feedback and hear what people had to say about the principles that we had put together. I went and talked with Brian Grant, who works at Google, and he's kind of a genius. He basically I don't know what he works on day to day, but Google seems to basically assign him to go around and tell everybody everything they're doing wrong with their projects. And then they just soak up the wisdom and fix it. So I think I posted it in the principles, but now I'm looking in there and I don't see it. So maybe I'll just share with you what he said when he looked at it. So hang on, let me grab this. And I'll put it up and we can just review that feedback together. I'd love to get this feedback collected from more people, and just continually get broader perspectives and see where we can go with it, you know? So, okay, here's
Dan, extremely quick question related to that. In the call, was there any discussion about Google potentially joining the interested parties document?
No.
Okay.
That wasn't, I basically just said, hey, can you take a look at this?
Okay.
And he just obliged nicely. I'll paste it right here. So this is from Brian Grant. I guess I'll read it. I'll read it out, but it's sitting in the notes meeting. He says, I have questions about the first principle. Quote, desired state expressed declaratively as data. What do you consider to be data? And does the desired state need to be represented as data or automatically translatable to data? I don't consider, say, a Helm chart to be a format writable by machines. Charts are human authored. Same is true for all config languages that are more complex than data serialization formats like JSON. Or is this referring to the APIs of the system under management, such as Kubernetes and Terraform providers? That's a good point. I mean, I think actually the desired state, I think we actually even simplify it to take out the data part in the PR that we have open right now, just to say like, your state should be declarative. And then I think we go on to say it should be human readable and machine readable, something like that. So went beyond practice there. Then he says, principle 2, it sounds like package registries are also included, which is good, though that makes the GitOps name kind of questionable. I understand the desire to leverage the awareness of that term, though, and distinguish it from infrastructure as code. Yeah, I think this is a criticism that we're well aware of. I think we all kind of feel like GitOps is really catchy, but we also like, I've heard people say, well, people that were product managers for registries say, what about registry ops? It should be registry ops. And it seems like GitOps actually allows you to do Git registry ops. And it's just a matter of like the term maybe being potentially confusing because it's tied to Git. William?
This is a question that I get quite a bit, and this is the way I explain it. So infrastructure as code, so you're operating in a very specific scope and domain for that infrastructure. So GitOps will take that and consume that, but if we look at it as that might be one of the GitOps controller in a series of GitOps controller coordinating all this. So it's not the same thing, but it's a component that can be used. And the same will go with other industry cycles that are there. Even for example, in networking, there's something called the self-organizing networks, okay? Self-organizing network, which we're defining way before even CI/CD, is this type of network that can optimize, and everything they do is actually come from a single source of truth as well. It's not the same source of truth here, but if we put GitOps as their GitOps controller, each one of these now can integrate, and putting all them together, then you have the same GitOps pattern, but it's now using all these trends that have evolved over time. That's kind of what I try to describe when talking specifically about infrastructure as code and self-organizing networks in the mirrors of GitOps.
That makes sense. So his next piece of feedback, thank you, William.
Sorry,
was...
do you mind if I just...
No, go ahead. Yeah,
I was
please.
slow to raise my hand. I apologize. Okay. Just before we move on from that one point, I think I like the way you mentioned that, William, and one way we could put that on a bumper sticker potentially is to say infrastructure as code fits very neatly into principle 1. And that's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily require immutable versions or versioning, even though people do that. There's nothing requiring you to do that. You can keep it in a simple text file, or you can copy paste, a lot of this infrastructure. You could keep it inside of a Jenkins configuration box, or like old school Jenkins, you know what I mean, or whatever. Anyway, so it's,
you can keep
really
it in a Dewey Decimal card holder on the shelf.
Pretty much. So as far as I understand, it really is the focus of declaring what you want your infrastructure to look like. So it's really number one. But I think that it's also important to note that GitOps is not only for infrastructure; it's also for applications and other parts of the system. So it really doesn't even fully encompass number one. It is just a component of the
that's a really good point.
Number one. Yeah,
that's a really good point, because I was thinking like, oh, maybe we should just think of GitOps as like infrastructure as code plus automation, and that's like gets you most of the way there. And I was like, well, maybe we should just change that principle to just say infrastructure as code. But you're right. I mean, it's not just the infrastructure; it's also the application. It's everything you need to run the system and actually have the system be running. Whereas the infrastructure is viewed as separate. So,
right. Or anything you need to run a system. It could also be an incredibly tiny component as you work on your journey, on your GitOps journey. So no one is really excluded there, including infrastructure.
Yeah, great point. William?
Yeah, adding to that, one of the things I say is that GitOps is infrastructure, platform, and applications. It's not one only. And it fits perfectly to what Scott is saying. It's not only the infrastructure, it's everything and the stack, basically. Mm-hmm. So it's taking that overarching approach.
Yeah, how did you phrase it? It's infrastructure, apps, and platform?
Yeah, I call it infrastructure, platform, and applications. If you think that applications, the traditional CI/CD, you can use that, you can integrate that. The platform have over time created ways that can be reused or can develop something new. And the infrastructure as code, you combine all of those and they still are part of GitOps as per the principles.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. Interesting. Okay. I guess if we're ready to move on, his next item was, also, I don't understand the purpose of the fourth principle. It seems to be more about the system under management than the management system, and the necessary caveats mentioned in the notes contradict the principle. Personally, I'd drop it. In general, it's necessary to more clearly distinguish between the management system and the system under management. I'm like rereading it right now. Like, I totally understand that.
I don't disagree with him, but I'm not excited to revisit that right now, personally. But because I think we already said that, like, really, pretty much all of us said, well, we don't really need that, but it is kind of a period on the end of a sentence. It's mostly saying that it's mostly a almost an ontological note. You know, it's saying, what is GitOps? The first three are principles for GitOps itself. The last one is basically saying, uh, in order for a system to really be managed under GitOps, it needs to follow these principles and not just this is not just one component in some other series of systems in an ideal sense to really complete your journey in GitOps, you know. And I think that's the only thing that there is. Now, a lot of times qualifications like that come before a set of principles. You know, you have a sentence that essentially says that, and you say, you know, we could really, in another way of saying this, take that out and put that as a paragraph or a sentence in the beginning and say, and just simply say that in order to follow these principles, principle 1, 2, 3. I think we all decided to keep it as that for now, because it seemed to reiterate and essentially say, hey, principle 4, we really mean it. And that's kind of it. So I don't disagree with them at all. I just wanted to bring up that we've discussed this, and that's where we landed so far.
Yeah.
I would almost say that I'd love to put that as an item to revisit after we kind of seal everything else, you know.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like principle 3 tells us how the system should be operated. And yeah, and principle 4 is just kind of like, but really though, like it should just be operated in this way. So it is redundant, but I also feel like it does need clarification and like repeating because it's like the hardest part of it. Like so many people, I mean, I think you guys have all had this experience where they come to you and like, oh, you're doing stuff with GitOps. Yeah, I use infrastructure as code, so like I do that. And you're like, yeah, well, there's more to it. Like you have to have continuous reconciliation. You need to have this operator that's pulling, and it's not just the infrastructure. And that gets them part of the way there. But to say like, no, but like when you actually operate your system, this is the only way you should be doing it. There shouldn't be another way.
Yeah, and you know, ultimately, there are many different self-referential items in tech. You know, for example, YAML or other, you know, other whether they're acronyms or principles or whatever, or in law, you can have a principle that relates to itself. It's pretty clear that it's not like the others, and that's it. You know, and if it's really unclear as to why this is there, we could even say the only mechanism through which the system is intentionally operated is through all of these principles. You know, but I think we just kind of left it simple in terms of just grammar. You know, again, anyway, I'm not going to repeat myself.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, let's cogitate on that. Think about it. Big thank you to Brian Grant for being willing to take the time and provide the feedback. And
Totally.
I would encourage
you, because like literally like if I would, it would be really nice to see his continued involvement in some way if that were an interest of his.
Yeah, definitely. And so just a reminder, like, please get these principles out to people that haven't seen them, ask for their feedback, get it written down, bring it to the session, bring it to the group. What I might do, maybe I'll just open a GitHub issue that says like soliciting feedback. Hey, when you go and talk to somebody, collect their feedback, post it here. Let's have discussion, and just so we can track it and keep it going. But I'd like to get a lot more of these done. So please, if you're able to, think of that person that you think is like, I think we all have those people that we look up to. It's like, oh my gosh, that's like one of those brilliant engineers. I have a few people on my list that are like always the first person I think of when I think of, brilliant engineering minds. Go reach out to them, show them the principles, say, hey, we've had 20 some odd people work on this. We feel like we really want to make it impactful and important. Would you take a look? Give me your feedback. I want to share it with the group. And then just make sure they're okay with you sharing it with the group. That's all. So Cool.
May I make one note about Brian before we move on? Just
Yeah.
to, everyone on this call probably knows, but just in case, because we are recording this, Brian was, one of the original architects of Kubernetes and the original lead architect of Kubernetes. So this is very squarely within his domain.
Yeah. Yeah. When Helm was kind of getting popular, he was invited to speak at Helm Summit, which is a contributors day. And he basically got up and he was like, here's everything wrong with Helm that keeps it from being like something that I want to recommend to everybody to use. And the team basically listened to what he said and they said, okay, there's our Helm 3 roadmap. And that's what they went and built. They just went and fixed all the stuff that he said. So it worked out pretty well. Great guy. Anyway, cool. Well, please collect feedback. And with that, we can turn the balance of the meeting to the working session. And Scott, take the wheel. I'm going to grab a drink here and I'll be right back.
Okay, great. Will do. And it's good because we are now at 3:33. Very auspicious number for people who are into that kind of thing. Okay, so let me go ahead and share the screen again. There we go. Great. Okay, so where we were was inside of the files tab of the pull request that Brace opened. That was it was derived from several sources and ultimately compiled and edited to, or at least worked on with a few weeks of collaboration sessions with me. Really at kind of like before we had started these committees or any of this kind of stuff. So certainly before the Principles Committee, and it came out of the Principles Committee came out of the need for the Principles Committee showed up because of this PR seemed pretty hard for everyone to really get involved in using that tool or in that way. And I agree, it really worked out well. So we reviewed the files. We're now looking at the glossary, and then we'll look at the principles file if we have time. I hope we do. And then if we have more time, the last file to look at is the rationale file. So I opened, I went ahead and said, view that file in a new tab. Here it is. So this is the glossary. Is the font too big for everyone, or is it good?
Looks good.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, so these are the glossary items from that pull request, and then in this next tab, here are the glossary items that we have currently in the Open GitOps documents, repo that's still at the VU 0.1.0 pre-release. We've got, I just want to take a quick glance at them. First of all, do we have all of these four? Desired state, state store, reconciliation, and software system. We've got desired state, state store. We don't have reconciliation. We do have continuous, but not yet reconciliation. And we have software system. So I believe because of that, we have already done all the work to review each of these, except for, oh, we have extras, including declarative description, but we do not have the state store. And can anyone recall, I believe we purposefully omitted that because it felt too far-reaching. Does anyone have that memory there?
What was the point of contention? Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that desired state. I think what I believe, if I remember right, is that when we were adding glossary items, we started with specific excerpts that were important to understand the principles. And we pulled them over one at a time until we pulled over every single one of them that was already proposed, and added another one, except for we did not bring in state store. And I just wanted to clarify, I believe we said that that the terminology was just unnecessary, and we omitted that terminology altogether from this doc so far. So we didn't bring in state store. We just have.
But it's there at the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God, what am I talking about?
The one that's missing is reconciliation.
Thank you, thank you, Mosh. Wow, I appreciate that. Okay. What am I remembering then? I guess maybe we just... Sorry, give me 1 second here. Special precautions must be taken. So this was actually a mistake, because we have it linked to a file that doesn't even exist. Okay. Since I'm sharing my screen, would someone help me take notes right now, at least on action items? I think the first one
Yeah, I got you.
is that we should update the state store glossary item to, at the very least, fix the broken link or address that. Thanks, Moshe. I'm not sure what I'm remembering. I do remember we had a discussion about it, and I guess what I thought was wrong. I thought we ended up leaving it out. But, may I just do a page search here? Interestingly, I believe we don't really say state store anywhere except for that glossary item itself. We're just talking about a system state and desired state. Yeah. Okay, well, all right, maybe we should just move on from that, unless because the goal of, if we're going to stick to the goal of this, we're mainly in parsing mode and we're not in debate mode. So I think we've at least flagged that item as something to revisit. Anyway, I think that's the last one for, I think that's the last one for the glossary file.
So I think the software system probably also needs a revisit as well.
Okay.
It reads very long, and it is quite opinionated in what it's saying there. So I think we should just look at it at some point. We don't need to do it now, but
Okay.
Now that you mention it, it is grammatically incorrect. this second sentence on there.
All right, cool. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, great. Thanks for the notes. While
Yeah, I got you.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Moshe. All right, so we've got those two things. Let's go ahead and look at the principles file. Okay, so I'm actually, let me shut this for a second. I almost want to say, could we look at the rationale file first? Do any of you have an opinion on which of these two documents we should start looking through to parse?
Rationale, let's do it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was thinking, just to change it up a little so we don't feel like we're kind of in a rut.
Like on principles all day. It is the principles committee.
Yeah.
Are we still working on principles? Oh.
Well, in any case, no one objected, so moving on. All right, so, and then we can get right back to the document if we get through this. So I just wanted to show what the length of this is. It's not intensely insane in terms of length. So maybe we could kind of at least say which of these are, what did we say we were going to do? Excuse me. Definitely, potentially, or likely not useful for our current direction. So Yeah. All right, so this rationale is, I just want to be clear about what it does, and then I'll shut up so we can read it together. But primarily, it's all bullet points and then a few text notes at the bottom. So it really is saying that there are serious issues about the fact that many software systems' desired state isn't defined somewhere separately from the running system. And the rest is kind of flourishes about that and the specific problems. And just to highlight this, so I'm skipping past it just so that there's not as many words, but essentially, for the moment, essentially this first sentence is the gist. It leads to several issues, which are detecting drift from the desired state, recovering from transitional states, controlling and auditing actors' access and actions. And there are probably other issues, but those are the only ones so far that we actually identified as bullets and then spelled out. Oh, here we go. These are only a small sample of the issues that arise if we don't do this thing. And we believe GitOps is a solution. Since these occur so universally when operating software systems, we also believe GitOps is fundamentally agnostic about specific tools. So that's really kind of the note about that they're universally applicable and not really tied to tools. And that's really that's my overview of this, but would everyone like to take a moment to read, or sorry, a few minutes? Maybe we can time box it to 5 minutes or something and read through this and form opinions on whether any of this is still useful as a supporting document, or if we if so, if you have opinions on where we might put this in Open GitOps.
Okay, I'm setting a timer for 3 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me send a link to people directly.
You mean because I want to isn't a good isn't a good reason?
Someone's got to.
Not enough.
Because Dan's the moderator. So hang on, let me stop the share for the moment. Paste in the link to everyone. Is there anyone on the call that doesn't have the ability to easily read this on their own, and it's better for me to share my screen for it? Okay. Just let me know, and I can do so. I'll shut up now.
One attribute I can think you might want to add is reproducibility. If you wanted to make multiple copies of the same system.
I'm going to go back to helping with notes. No. Dan, thanks. Or I mean, you can still do it, but.
So for the next 2 more minutes, write down your notes, and then we'll come back and discuss. So we can just kind of go through and. 30 more seconds.
Dan, I feel like I need another minute or two. I don't know if anyone else, am I the slowest note taker?
Time extended, 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Been done for 3 minutes. I don't know.
Don't show off, Robert.
Okay, we're arriving at time. If people feel like you need another minute, just raise your hand and we'll give another minute. Okay. So with that, time has been concluded. We've read through it. And just to restate, Scott, I think you were asking, one, do we need the rationale? And two, is this enough? Do we need to change it? Do we need to update it?
Yes, and my proposed process was just to go through all of the items and say, yeah, is it still useful? For sure. Is it like perhaps useful, or are we like definitely no? Like yes, no, maybe, essentially. And then yeah, where should we put it? That was my suggestion, but I'm also open to whatever we do as long as it's
Moshe?
Valuable.
Okay. So my thinking along this is that we might need some of the content here, but the positioning of it is, I think, off. So rather than position the rationale of why do we need GitOps, you position the outcomes and the objectives. So we want GitOps to achieve X, Y, Z, and these are the outcomes we want, and this is why we want these outcomes, rather than these are the problems we're trying to solve. because I think you can list a lot of problems, but if you don't have the outcome and the objective, then it's difficult to correlate those two things. Or it can be correlated, but I think from always from a sales perspective, you start with the outcome and the objective and not the problem. But yeah, so that's kind of just my 2 cents there.
I agree with that. Christian?
Yeah, just kind of just adding my +1 there. It is not to speak you know, kind of pardon the pun, but we should be declarative about it, right? Like we should say what our end state should be, right? Like this is why you know, instead of what problems does it solve? Although I don't think it's particularly bad to put what problems it solves, but it's like, this is what I get by doing GitOps. So kind of just +1ing it and adding my own little flair to what Moshe said.
Yeah, while others are raising their hands here, I feel like it's almost like saying, we don't want to write a white paper, but we're going to put part of a white paper down. And so I kind of feel like we should go all the way and do like a white paper. And this feels like the beginning of a good blog post. Like, you know, the stuff in general, like I agree with all these things. You know, I have a few little nitpicks and some phrasing or whatever here, but I think it would be good to take, like, if we want to do a white paper, let's do a white paper, you know, and let's build off the principles and do the white paper rather than I feel like this doesn't go far enough. I feel like it's both too little and too much. Like it either needs to be less or it needs to be more. John?
Okay, so my feedback was, you know, you're kind of like making me rethink what my feedback was. Damn. I'll just say it, but I think that's a good point, by the way. We did, at a high level first, we did have an issue at some point where we, you know, I can find it again, but I believe it may have been Moshe. I could be wrong. I seem to remember it may have been Moshe that started the GitHub issue in the GitHub working group about listing common problems. Does that ring a bell? I can look for it real quick. In any case,
so I opened a PR for that, but that's more about open problems, not problems that are solved by doing this.
yeah. I could be super wrong here. Well, anyway, I'll have to look for it, but my memory is sort of good on this, but clearly I'm not able to find it right now. But in any case, there was someone who proposed listing common problems, and my thought was these were shared problems that many users run into, and which GitOps is a solution for. So I don't know if a document should simply be called that, or if we really don't want to focus on. Let me just say this. I just wanted to. I think it is really important somewhere to help users understand. Oh, this is me, you know, because someone may have a problem, but they don't really know the answer to it yet. And it may be. I think it's important to have that somewhere. Perhaps not here in this doc, but to note those, and that's all I wanted to say for that. Okay, and then secondly, I was just thinking, I think it is good to have a rationale. I agree that it could be reformatted to have our desired end state in mind, you know, and then I just have a few notes about which things really just which things are which. So do you want me to let someone else speak before I get into the details of those like 6 quick notes, or should I just spit it out? Chris is first.
I think I agree with Dan there that I think that and this would be redone, but I think that the core characteristics of GitOps, which is, detecting drift, recovering from transitional, blah, 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 those become like the headers. And then underneath that, in a white paper like setting, you can say, here's the problems that solves and why you would be interested in this. So I could see it being extended in that way. And then each of those bullet point headers becomes that aspect of GitOps, and then explain why that aspect is so cool. That's it.
Well,
Sorry,
we're
I'm going
at
to try to
time,
take notes
Scott.
real quick. Oh, we're out of time already. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm going to write down the notes that Moshe just listed in the discussion and Chris just mentioned. Was there any other important note that people felt I didn't document properly in this topic section?
I think I'm good. So with that, if you have any other notes to add on to the document piece, feel free to add them. As always, the recording will be posted and added to the doc. I'm going to be out of town next week, so just housekeeping items. We do need somebody to moderate next week and somebody to take notes. So do we have any volunteers for moderation duty or notes? Scott's done it a ton, so love to have somebody else take it on. And I'm happy to take it in 2 weeks.
I can take notes.
All right, Chris Sanders, put you down for notes. It's like one of those things where you just ask and you just wait until everybody feels uncomfortable.
Does anyone want to try to moderate who hasn't done it before?
I don't mind giving it a bash.
All right, Moshe. You've got plenty of help. Everybody's pretty friendly.
Yeah, well, I'll try and moderate myself the most.
All right, I love it. Great, awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Good session. Glad we could get a lot done. Follow the PRs, stay in the chat, get us more feedback. Lots of good stuff going on, and we'll get the website up here. Take care. Bye.
Cheers.
There's